Whenever you're ready.
Call the Oconee County Planning Commission meeting to order. Today it's Monday, August 5th. It's not August 5th.
19th.
This is wrong. August 19, 2024. Let's start with an invocation.
Pray with me if you'd like to.
Well, dear Father, thank you for this day that you've given us, a gift. Help us to be appreciative for every moment that you give us, for the opportunities, the relationships, the activities, the work that we can do. And I pray that you'd guide this planning commission, bless them for taking time out of their schedules to do this work for the county. And we know how important planning is. Without a plan, we tend to drift astray. So we just pray that you'd give the planning commission your wisdom, help staff to come alongside them, so the county turns out good work product. And in your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I ask for an approval of the minutes from July 15th, we need to make sure that we get the agenda corrected from August 5th to August 19th. All right. That is when we do next week.
It says the 19th.
It says in it.
Mine says for whatever reason, mine said the 5th, sorry. Not sure why. All right, so approval of the minutes from, look at this other agenda here. Yes, it is for July 15th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed?
It's unanimous.
Okay. All right, we have public comments for non-agenda items. We don't have anybody signed up for that tonight. So let's move straight to commission member comments. Does anybody have anything to say this evening unrelated to where we are here? Yes, sir.
I'd just like to thank the public for attending. Like we got a good full house tonight. Should always be this way.
I would agree. Thank you all for attending. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
The first meeting in September, I'm unable to attend. It's a holiday weekend. I didn't know if you had a lot going on or just throw it out there.
I appreciate that. Are we saying our first meeting is the second?
5th.
We got it on that Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay. Staff comments, if there are no more.
Yep,
Member
got
comments.
2 subdivisions to share with you guys this evening. So what I'm sharing with you is the preliminary application that's coming in for phase 2. This is what they've given us so far. The phase line is not on here. However, this is Shadowwood over off of Shiloh Road. I pulled this over here now. Approximately 41 additional lots and new roads. So here's Shiloh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's wells.
back over. Starting here, and I've got lot 53, so this portion of it. Happy to answer your questions about these. Just take a look at it.
No questions there.
Second one is Falls Park at McKinley Creek. It's gonna be 71 more parcels. And Again, these will get more refined as they go through resubmittals with us. This larger piece, you see the roads coming through here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I do have a question for Jim on the first subdivision.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry,
No, you're okay.
took me a minute to think of it.
Yeah, you're good.
How many new lots in that
41.
41? So our new ordinance
Yep.
applies to that?
It does. So they've got another 27 acres in here.
Okay.
Not on this diagram? When you say they have another 27, not on this diagram?
No, so they have 27 total acres in the parcel that they're cutting the 41 out of.
So had we not implemented that ordinance, would it have been different?
It would not. They're not impacted by the ordinance.
Okay.
It did appear most of those were,
I see .3s, .25s, but
They're regular.
these. Right here.
Yeah. No townhouses.
No, there's no townhouses.
Yeah, no.
and is that neighborhood on sewer or septic?
Sewer.
It's a .3. All right.
There are these 11,000 ones on here, .26, kind of hard to see. Double.
Those not, yeah, I can't read that. Not even close.
We're ready for the balls.
Again, this is following these existing parcel lines through here and coming up. So, 71. All these are larger lots, all over half an acre, and considerable amount of green space in the center as well.
And is this north of Cliffs North? Falls North?
I'm not familiar with all the different subdivision names, unfortunately. So
Looks to be just north of that.
Yes, damn.
Okay. Do y'all have any questions on this one? Okay. All right. We are down to, was that all your comments?
yeah, there's
We're down to item 8, discussion regarding lot setbacks. Specifically flag lots and those irregular shaped lots. Mr. Root, I appreciate all the work that has gone into it. We looked at all the redlining that you came up with. I thought it was going to be a more simple solution than that, but it looks like there were some conflicts that you were able to find in there that, as you got into it, maybe you got into it more.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, if it was that last part of the motion that I kind of giggled at when Mr. Garland said, make sure, that we don't have any conflicts. I made extra sure and then kept digging up. There weren't conflicts. And James hasn't had any problem in implementing the ordinance with these different terms. But essentially, we have like 4, 5 in occasion, terms that are generally speaking about the same thing. Setbacks, so you got setback lines, building setback, setback, building line. And so these terms are kind of used interchangeably. I think it's just a product of Chapter 32 being there first, 38 coming afterwards, and then, certain things just being revised over time, and perhaps some of the nomenclature wasn't kept exactly the same. So, all the red indicates changes to the current ordinance provisions that are in place, and I separated it 32 and 38. Most of that red is for that latter purpose, which was really just to harmonize the terms. And I call that out first because it may not need to be done. I'm one to advocate for precision, but when we have so many terms that have been really operationally fine with the planning department, I'm a little reluctant to open up 32 and 38 in this broad way that I did, just knowing that, you push one place, it gives another place, and I don't know what else we may, find down the road. I did a search term throughout all the code for, all of these terms, didn't find anything that would make something go a different direction than it has been, but that's not to say it's not in there. It's a lot of, obviously, 40
Right.
chapters. So, with that kind of preface, the big items, if we get past the body of what I'll call the enabling ordinance, that's just that standard. Exactly. So if we get to Exhibit B.
It looked like there were two areas in Exhibit B that we really needed to make decisions on, and if or, and then one was about linear footages.
Yes. So one, the question, we've just put that on the back burner, whether you want to do this wholesale kind of revising of the terminology so they line up better between 32 and 38, which I put here. And then secondarily, which was my main charge, was given the definition of flag lot, which is added. I think I went through a number of different definitions that I found, on the internet. It's not really a legal search term that's defined in a lot of different ways, but this seemed the simplest and most kind of user-friendly when we start applying it to flag lots. So that definition I put in 32 and 38. And then if you scan down, you see setback all in red in 32. So that setback wasn't really defined as such in 32. Setback line was, yard was, all relate to setback. But for consistency, I pulled that definition from setback from 38 and put it to 32 here. So that's why that's there. Yard similarly is used kind of as the setback area. And it is carried throughout all of 38 on each of those little tables, industrial district, whatever, control free district, it talks about the yard setback. So that's harmonized. So then we get to 38, which is probably where you have the bigger issues. And this gets to the first question that you had with flag lots. This is 1B. 1, the minimum length of flagpole lot shall be X feet, and the maximum length shall be 300 feet. The 300, which was existing in the code now, and y'all brought up, hey, perhaps we should have a minimum length of the flagpole, and perhaps we should have a maximum width of the flagpole. So that's why I gave those opportunities to insert those, but I don't know the rationale. I know the rationale for a minimum length of a flagpole, and the width, minimum width of the flagpole. That's generally the traveling area to get back to the lot. You travel the pole to get back to the lot, so you don't want it to be overly narrow. But a maximum width, I don't, and maybe James can chime in from a planner's perspective, I don't know the necessity or use for it, but I know it's brought up by you all, so I left it there. Similarly with the length of a flagpole. You want to do minimum.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, I was
I'm
gonna
not
answer
sure, I'm not
that,
sure that you.
answer that maximum
Yeah,
question
I'm not
for
sure that
you.
you want to do a minimum, because, as long as it's within 300 feet, as I understand it, James, tell me if I'm wrong, you're trying to guard a very long pole where you might have 6 lots stacked in front of it or something like that. So, that's the way the flag lots are meant to be designed. So you have these, you can put 2 lots essentially where 1.5 would go. So put that out there. But y'all had the notion of putting minimums and maximums that weren't stated, so there you go.
And then it looks like there, under E as well, was we pick 1.
Yeah, that's exactly, left off with that one as far as the irregularly shaped lots. The 2 E's were the options there. Yes, sir.
So I know when we had talked about it the other day, the reason we were putting a maximum is because we were taking things that weren't traditionally a flag lot by the image that it showed in 38 as a flag lot, and we were applying it to anything that had a width less than what the zoning district required. So in residential zoning district, for example, 80 feet is the minimum lot width, so if the lot was 79 feet wide, then it was considered a flag lot. And so we were going to try to plug in a maximum number to make it truly a flagpole, as opposed to simply a lot that wasn't 80 feet wide.
So I think, if you read through them and tell me if I hit the target, I think we've got the differentiation between flagpole and other irregular lots. Flag lot's not really irregular, but I think we've covered both. So does that mean you want to remove then the redlining for the minimum and maximum that weren't in there before?
You know, in there under number 2, it has a minimum width of the flag lot shall be, and it says 30 feet. But a driveway, according to chapter 26, is 12 feet. Obviously, if a fire truck needed to get down, the fire department said they need 5 feet on either side. So should that be closer to 22 feet than 30? Was there a reason for that we did that back in the day?
30 was in there, I don't know. Tom, do you know why it got in there?
It was just totally arbitrary.
Oh, okay.
I was just trying to make it line up with chapter 26. From a driveway standpoint, if that's what that flag is.
I'm assuming that there was some good rationale, that predated me for that being in there. Obviously, you need, the road traveling surface, and then you need maintenance area. It doesn't need to be 30 feet, certainly maintenance area on both sides. If there was some rationale.
Well, and it's somebody's driveway, so if they're maintaining it, they're maintaining it. Do you all want to go through these areas that we need to input some stuff? Were there other areas that were of concern to people or that stood out? I just wanted to double check before we get into those areas specifically. I did have a couple of questions. Just wanted to see and I very much appreciate that you cleared up the definitions and made them mirror each other in chapter 32 and in 38 as far as the definitions were concerned. Under building line and building line setback, the very first one under Exhibit B, Chapter 32, I just want to confirm when it talks about the structure that a driveway is not part of a structure. Sideways are not part of a structure.
That's correct.
Steps are not part of a structure.
Definition of structure.
I would assume a retaining wall is part of a structure.
Correct. I'm shooting from the hip a little bit, so James, tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah, okay.
What was that?
Only
Maybe we as,
I'm gonna make a motion that we allow Mr. Markovich to appear.
I'll second that. All those in favor, say aye. Mr. Markovich, you'll answer that one question for us.
Retaining walls, when they get above 4 feet, are structures. If they're below 4 feet, they're not.
And that's a
Then
building code
again, there's
definition?
Another situation where retaining walls, when they're actually attached to the dwelling, then they're a part of the dwelling. But if they're separate and they're above 4 feet, then they're a structure.
And is that called for in the building codes?
Yeah.
Or, okay, so we have a definition for
So
that.
that doesn't, I think we interpret it differently based on what's in chapter 38 and the allowable structure in the setback. Freestanding walls and fences are allowed by specifically named, retaining walls are not. Retaining walls are structural element, it's doing something. Freestanding wall is separate than retaining wall.
Mr. Attorney, do we need to further define that as we,
The structure in 38 is anything constructed or erected, the use of which requires location in or on land or attachment to something having a permanent location in or on land.
I mean, I'm just visualizing, okay, you have a house that has a retaining wall that spans out so that there's some side windows in the basement, for example. That to me is part of the structure of the residence and needs to fit within the setback. But say you've got a driveway that's coming in off of the road and they're needing to hold some earth back because they're a steeper drive, and now you've built a retaining wall there. If it's, the driveway itself can be right up against the property line, but can the retaining wall that's holding the dirt back also be inside that right of way? So to me, those are two different elements that we're now calling structure.
And so in 38-9.3, the dimensional requirements, it does say Space in any required yard shall be open and unobstructed except for the ordinary projection of window sills, cornices, eaves, window air conditioning units, and other architectural features, provided that such features shall not project no more than 2 feet into the required yard. Again, that's the setback area. And then steps and heating and cooling units may project into the required yard a distance not to exceed 5 feet, but no closer than 5 feet from the property line. Fences, freestanding walls, hedges, septic lines may be located in any setback so long as they remain on the property. So yeah, I think retaining walls would be separate, and discrete from that definition, as James said.
So we don't need to make any adjustments to building line.
I think a retaining wall would be precluded in the setback.
Okay, preclude from being in the setback.
Yes. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that an issue then?
So
How have we handled it
had
in the past?
3 retaining wall variances in the past year, I'd say. One for a rear, one for a front, and one for the side. So, all were approved. You know, we have a lot of retaining, actually have another one coming up for variance, not this month, but next month in September, for another one that's on the side property line that goes all the way up to the property line. That one is attached to the house.
That one being attached to the house, okay? I just brought it up here if anybody else has any say on that particular. There wasn't anything else on that page 1 that I had question of. The yard, it had that unobstructed from the ground upward. I just wanted to, again, understand how those retaining walls would fit in. Center of that paragraph.
That was the definition that pulled over from 38. So I think apart from flag lot and then the 2 definitions that we came up with last time, none of this
Is
is
new
native to
information.
me. This is
Okay.
just 38 to 38.
We're simply pulling the 2 definitions together, which was one of the things we wanted to
Right.
do. Okay. So if we get then to 38, where we're talking about item, lot size configuration, here we are. Items 1 and items 2. The first one is item 1 under flag lots. A couple of things that have seen. One, it says flag lot, not more than 2 single-family dwellings. The other, I was seeing the 30 feet. Those are in current conflict with Chapter 26, I think. Anybody have any input on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. And because we're including the control-free areas, we're now taking a possible, 1 acre lot size and saying you can only put, or 2 acres back there, you only can put 2 homes on that flag lot.
Again, this is, if it's not red, it's
Right.
been showed for
Yeah.
at least 9 years, I guess, because I didn't change it.
Yes, but I think where it gets us into a conflict is we took out the exemption for the control-free district.
It's still
It's still there?
yeah.
There's still an exemption for that part, just not the density. But if we are making a lot of changes in red, is there a reason we shouldn't bring it in consistent? And then when I say consistent, Chapter 26 says that a driveway can service 3 homes. And this is saying that a driveway can service 2 homes.
It's saying flag lot can contain no more than 2 single-family dwellings? Is that?
Yes, that, again, just bringing it up, not saying it's important or not important, just saying, hey, this is an inconsistency. If nobody thinks it's an important issue, then let's move to the next one.
It'll be up to y'all policy.
Okay? Moving down to the next one. It says the minimum width of a flagpole lot shall be 30 feet, and the maximum width of a flagpole lot shall be blank feet. Originally, we were talking about wanting a maximum width because we were calling things flag lots.
Wait a minute, did we not, we skipped over one? The length,
Oh, the length shall be 300?
the maximum length 300. There is no minimum length right now. Do we want to set one or not?
I don't know that there's an importance for setting
I
one.
don't think so either.
I couldn't think of one.
I think the maximum on that was appropriate, as far as, without minimum in that definition.
I make a motion that we strike minimum length of the pole of the flag lot. And just leave it as maximum length of the pole of the flag lot shall be 300 feet.
I'll second that. Any other comments about needing a minimum? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Yes, Mr. Gollin? We didn't hear you, Mr. Gollin.
That was an aye for being affirmative.
Okay.
7-0, it's a unanimous.
All right, are we ready to move to number 2?
Before we move to number 2, we kind of jumped over the 2 single-family dwellings.
Okay.
I make a motion that we strike 1B in its entirety.
1B.
B, Bravo,
B.
with the exception of the last sentence.
So you just want to strike the first sentence.
The first sentence, remove the first sentence, leave the second sentence.
My question
Second.
is, have we had any BZA activities associated with that? If we haven't, I don't know why we're worried about it.
Well, it's not a point of worrying about it. I mean, right now, we're modifying this document. It has a potential to create an issue. It really should be driven by the density standard. And,
Or by the road standard.
right,
Because if you said, okay, the flag lot, if you didn't put a maximum number of homes, then it would default to how big a road can you get in there, because now it's an addition to the subdivision like we saw in the example, and not really a service of a couple of homes.
right.
Is that possible, James? To where if we took that out, then it's no longer a flag, it's a section going into a subdivision.
Don't think so. I think that they'd fall under having the 50-foot right of way with it even being a private drive for servicing more than 3 dwellings before you get.
So right now, if we put a maximum width of 50 feet under number 2, then we would need to default back to 26, though.
I think it would take care of it. I think it would sort itself out through what you would need to supply if you wanted to access more than 3 dwellings. You would have to have 50.
Have to have the right of way to do it, right? Okay, so we don't have a second on this yet. Do we need to, is there somebody that will second his motion? I'll second it to finish the thought here. The thought is right now is it says 2 single-family dwellings. Chapter 26 says 3 single-family dwellings on a driveway. A shared drive can service 3 homes. I think it should say 3 homes. I'm not sure if we should leave it blank altogether, because then what if somebody wants to put 5 homes, and then the question becomes, it can no longer be a driveway, now it needs to be a serviceable drive. And would automatically then, chapter 26 would kick in. So if we erased it altogether, if we didn't change it to 3, if we erased it altogether, it would service itself. It would either be 3 on the drive, or it would need to be a road width that's appropriate. So it seems like we could take that out altogether.
Yeah, if you're gonna modify it, I think taking it out would be much cleaner than trying to account for every other circumstance.
Tell me your motion again.
My motion is to remove the first sentence of 1B. A flag lot shall contain no more than 2 single-family dwellings and uninhibited access structures, or accessory structures. And leave in the second sentence, which is flag lots may be permitted under the following conditions. I need to put on my glasses. That would help.
All right.
That is my motion.
We've had a first and a second. Is there any more discussion on that? All those in favor of removing that first sentence, signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous.
All those opposed? It was unanimous? Okay. Getting down to one then, we said no minimum. We took that section out. Right now, it's a maximum of 300. Not sure where that number came from, for or against, but I would say that a typical lot from road to back is probably not more than 300 from a typical standpoint, unless you're looking at acreage parcels and not really lots in a subdivision. So I think that would encompass easily that. Unless somebody has opposition, let's move to number 2. A minimum flagpole width on a flag lot shall be 30 feet. Again, the minimum to me is the 12-foot of driveway, and the fire department said they need 5 feet on either side just to be able to get their trucks in occasion. That would be 22 feet. For somebody's driveway access, I would think the minimum actually instead of 30 should be 22, but that's just me.
What about utilities, Mark? I mean,
Utilities
put
are
them
coming
down
in through the
the
middle of
center.
the yard. This is a driveway, so the utilities are coming in potentially from somewhere else. But that's a great question.
I mean, if we go back to a secondary road, we're looking at what, hard surface, 20 foot? I don't think,
20 foot.
22,
Sorry, what kind
the
of?
secondary road.
State secondary, it would either be 20 or 22, depending on the anticipated traffic flow.
And that's 2-lane traffic. So, you know, we're really, we're talking about a private drive going into.
Talking about a driveway.
Yeah, driveway. And
When we talk about minimums and maximums, we're talking about a driveway right now. That we're talking about blocking off space for the driveway.
I mean, we know that it's got to have clearance of 13 and a half feet. Most of your fire trucks are under, well, I'd say all your fire trucks are under 12 foot.
The reality is, I've never seen a fire truck pull down the driveway. They've always parked out in the road. But
And even if they
were
do, they're
servicing
going to back
multiple
out
homes,
and then they're
then-
going to have somebody pump too.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What is the average width of a mobile home these days?
Well, anything over 13 feet, you need a permit.
They're getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, is that something to consider and take this into consideration when not everybody's gonna build a house, maybe they wanna put a camper down there or an RV, a big, something like that.
So as we're looking at this, if it's an existing property, the existing terms would set in, and it would, again, minimum and maximum, those existing properties are already predetermined more than likely as far as size, and if it's something new and they're saying we're gonna build a mobile home subdivision, then they would definitely want to take those into consideration themselves as a developer when they build it. That's a good point. I don't know that we should say the minimum is that amount, though. But if it's not, if it's, yes, sir.
I don't think for a minimum that you need 30 feet. And if you have a 12-foot driveway, you know, or even a 10-foot driveway, I mean, not all driveways are 12 foot wide,
Right.
right?
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible to, and I know this, you want to get this to council, but we only have, I think y'all are meeting again in 2 weeks. Maybe for us to get some input from emergency services and roads and bridges who deal with these.
Don't mind doing that, but we have had a lot of discussion with Roads and Bridges and Emergency Services regarding width of some of these roads.
Yeah, not this, it was about the private roads, as I recall, if I'm thinking
Right.
about the same thing you're thinking.
Would the same thing not apply if it was a driveway or a private
Well, I
road?
think we're getting more narrow
Yeah.
than that. I mean, that was, now we're getting below 30. So, but obviously.
I'd like to try to knock out 2, and I'd like to try to knock out this paragraph and see, because I think those are our 2 main points that are still left.
What about hearing from the utility companies, what they wanna say? What would Duke say? What would sewer say? What would cable say? What would water say?
So it's your builder that determines your driveway as to where it's going and this and that. The utilities, again, are coming in through the front yard in most cases. So a utility going down a road, yes, but again, this is a person's driveway.
And it's coming down whose front yard then?
Are you talking about on the flag lot as far as going in between? It's gonna be going down on the side of the drive, or on the utility section, which would be in the 5-foot easements on the side. depending on how the developer established it. So there's multiple places that it would come in, based on the developer, not based on the utility.
Right, I'm just, it's probably unlikely to come through the front yard because the front yard is somebody else's.
Right, yep.
Well, they could all go down, and then one house splits off, and then they just keep right on going when they run the utilities. You would run the utilities parallel.
I think we're getting outside of the concept, maybe. So I did pull an illustration of a flag lot.
Sure.
So I think that's, you look at getting utilities to A, so the pole on A, say that's 30 feet, driveway, utilities, whatever, I was just referring to, unless there's an easement, I just can't imagine particular means that the developer would do it. D is probably not gonna carry an encroachment or a burden for the utilities for A. Can you all see?
Correct. But a developer would run the utilities potentially down the entire backside of the properties.
Oh, yeah, it could go from anywhere, but I was just
Right.
calling.
No, but then, so, I mean, that's a good point. So if we want to leave that one at 30 feet, I think the big thing is the maximum. That was what our original discussion was about, was we were calling unusually shaped lots, flag lots, and we were trying to get away from that. So we need to put a maximum in there, because we were calling 60-foot wide lots, flag lots. So to me, I mean, we need to plug a number in that's less than 80. I would say 35 or so, 35, 40. Anything beyond that becomes an unusually shaped lot and not a flag lot by definition. Is there a reason why we wouldn't do that?
No, I'm just trying to think out all the iterations of how it may play out, but not right now, I can't. I mean, it makes
So if you-
logical sense what you're saying.
Using your example of A, B, and C, which are great if you're in Texas on flat land, but on our topography here, things tend to curve around a little more. And so the question becomes is, if it's outside of a size, then it just becomes an unusually shaped lot rather than a quote flag lot. So we're defining, what does a driveway a flagpole look like? So if we're saying 30 feet, maybe it's 40 feet max, but I would think it would be 22 feet and 40 feet.
That is, as far as reducing the 30, again, I was just bringing up points, policy question for y'all. And then, if you lowered it, it would make the maximum, I guess, come more within a tolerable range.
Or we could do it at 50 feet to give it an access to be something larger and more pronounced, but then because we did remove the two homes. I don't want to do all the talking. Somebody make,
Do you want to look at letter E and see if that satisfies
okay,
part of what
we'll
you're
flip
talking
over
about?
to that.
Let me skip over the-
No, I appreciate us getting back onto somewhere. So would you, I think that I interpreted it as what we were discussing, the top one would be the one we wanted to apply, but would you go over them, Mr. Root, and,
Sorry, I was just seeing what various minimum widths we have. Most of which are, the smallest minimum width is 80. So, let me look at the 50 yard. So these were the two of three that James put forth when we last discussed it. E is just really basic, and I don't have a diagram, but if you take a pie-shaped lot, you're gonna start measuring the setback from the point at the road, and that's gonna count, whereas it wouldn't have counted previously until you got to the minimum width. It's gonna count, but you cannot build until you get to the minimum width. That's the essence of the first E. The second E, the different option is similar, but once you get to that minimum width, then it's plus X.
so it's two setbacks almost in,
Essentially, yeah. it is.
compared to the other one?
Correct.
Again, from what we had been discussing the first time, I thought the first one was the appropriate one.
All right, I make a motion that we select the first choice. I mean, we've already talked about this.
Second?
Any more discussion on that? All those in favor of the first E example, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Mr. Gallen, did you vote on that?
Sorry, no, I didn't. I'll vote in the affirmative.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe those were the big ones. The other ones were the uniformity of definitions.
I did have one other question. It's almost the last page, setback under chapter 38 definitions. If you could scroll there, James, when you have a second. It's number 14, setbacks, scroll on down. In parentheses, measured from the road wide array at the front lot, if the road right of way projects over the property line. And that does define it. But the previous definition said measured from the property line or measured from the right of way.
As applicable?
The definition seemed to adjust slightly from,
I think got cut and pasted it.
did you?
No, it could have been one of the cases that we've got setback line, building line, or the other ones that you're referring to. But
Okay.
setbacks defined.
It was understood, it just read a little bit differently from what I had read or thought that I had read. But it meant the same thing, so I don't really have an issue with it other than just bringing it up.
I think they're exactly what it should be.
The only other thing is item 2. Do we want to think on that a little bit, or does somebody
I
have?
have a motion.
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that the minimum lot width, or the minimum flagpole width be 22 feet based on 12-foot right-of-way plus 5 feet on either side, and a maximum of 40 feet based on chapter 26 items, and number of dwellings limited on the flag lot, which I think is less than 50 feet. That gives you margin.
Second.
And Mr. Root, by doing that, that further defines a flagpole as truly being a flagpole and not simply an unusually shaped lot. And just so everybody in the audience understands what we have been doing in the past as a county, if you had road frontage of less than 80 feet in a residential zoned area, everybody's setback of their front door of their house or the front of their house was 25 feet off of the right-of-way. If you had a lot that was less than 80 foot wide at the road, your setback didn't start until the lot became 80 feet wide, and then you had a 25-foot setback. So sometimes all the neighbors' houses were 25 or 30 feet off of the road, and all of a sudden, one house by itself was 60 feet back simply because of the unusual shape of the lot. And so what we were doing was trying to go through and fully define what a flagpole was so that we weren't simply applying unusually shaped lots as flagpole lots. So
Well, we had a few BZA cases, right?
we had
Where
8.
people wanted to build in that
Yes.
setback.
Yeah, I think it was 8 cases that had some variation of this. 3 for sure that were exactly this. All right, any more comment about the motion? All those in favor of approving that at 22 and 40 feet signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying opposed.
36-1.
All right,
Question.
yes.
Is 38 our zoning chapter? Is it necessary to put all this information in 38 and 32, and why not just 32? Why isn't it 38 also? I mean, it was,
Have a good conversation about that. That's a long history of why they're like that. I don't want to say it's Frankensteinian kind of like, this is added to 38, this is added to 32, but now it's a matter of you've got overlapping definitions that
Yeah.
are speaking to the same thing in both, and they're used in both chapters, not only defined, but used in both chapters. So if someone's looking at 32, they might as well see the same definitions as they're seeing in 38. That's the
Mr. Root.
fact that we got here in a little awkward way, I agree.
I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Root take this and turn it from red letter to something that we can review one more time and send up to council after that review.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Root.
Yes, sir, thank you.
All right, we are up to item number 9, Keep Oconee Beautiful, scenic highway proposal for Highway 130. We've got several comments, several people signed up, and we have some emails that had come in. For those people that want to speak on it, we've got 4 minutes. When there's a minute remaining, I'll hold this up, and when time's up, I'll hold this up. If people would try to hold to that as best as possible. We start with those public comments, and then we'll let the presentation let you come up to it. All right, so first comment, Mark Torres.
Good evening, I'm Mark Torres. I live in East Shore subdivision, District 1. We're right on Rochester Highway along the stretch that is under consideration. East Shores is one of the organizations that sponsor Adopt a Highway programs on Rochester Highway under the direction of our neighbors Lynn and Nick Hamilton. In 2013, we received an award from COBA as Adopt a Highway Group of the Year, or year or month. We got an award. We are responsible for the stretch between the dam and the dike. North from the Little River Dam to the dike south of Caitlin Drive. I believe we also used to do the dam. Now that was a bit hairy. Those orange vests that we wear don't seem like much protection with cars whizzing past at supposedly 55 miles an hour. I think Duke does the dam now, or maybe the county, which is. Sometimes we kind of feel like old Sisyphus, rolling that rock up the mountain every day and having it roll back down on him again every night. Almost literally, our volunteers go out for a couple hours on a Saturday morning, pick up multiple big garbage bags of trash, and then on Sunday, heading out to church, it's all back. But they do it because we love that road. There's nothing like driving north over the dam. The Newry Mill, nestled in the trees below to the right, Lake Kiwi sparkling blue on the left, with Whiteside Mountain hazy in the distance. There are people who move here, my in-laws for one, just for that view. You must know that it will not last without protection. I firmly believe that it absolutely is possible to have reasonable development, along with reasonable standards to provide that protection. This measure is one such standard. It will benefit not only those of us who live there now, but also those who will in the future live in those new developments, as well as everyone who uses that road. I urge you to approve this proposal and support future reasonable efforts to develop and preserve Oconee County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tommy Pittman.
I'm a property owner. I have 3 acres there on 130. I hope to build an office there. I do heating and air conditioning. And I'm not sure what all the ramifications of this is. I was kind of blindsided by this. I didn't realize this was happening, so for whatever reason. But and I'm not totally opposed to it. I'm not in favor of it. But I appreciate Mr. Torres and the work they do to keep the highways clean. And I'd like to see reasonable accommodations made for both commercial interests and the residential owners. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kent Wigington.
Hey, I'm Kent Wigington. I also own property on 130 just north of, just north of the old Clemson Highway intersection. As property owners in that area, We don't really have an idea of how the scenic highway designation would affect our properties. Perhaps if we knew the details of the program, we may even be in favor of it. I'm all for protecting but really we haven't seen that information. I don't know what that designation does. Also don't know if it goes a step above the county, if it goes to a state level, that may be a stepping stone too. So as it stands right now, I would really urge a postponement or a no vote until the stakeholders on that highway, the folks that own property on each side, can be informed and know what this is all about. And if a designation is approved at a later time, it would seem more logical to me that it would begin at the Newry Dam, where it's actually scenic. The road up above there has a lot of entrances and possibilities for up towards the intersection. There's more opportunities for a few commercial things. I don't think that should be taken off the table for folks who own the property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Watson Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Watson Johnson, and I live in Salem. First time I drove on Rochester Highway was in 1973, not long after the lake was flooded. In those days, before the trees grew up, you could see Newry, you could see the village, you could see the mill. And now the trees have grown up, but do y'all remember that? Remember driving along there and seeing that? Over 50 years later, the drive is virtually the same as it was then, which is something to be said for. To this day, every time I drive along the highway, I cannot help but to look out across the lake. And this afternoon, driving across there, you could see all the way up to Whiteside. And it's just an unmatched view. My wife's heart sings every time she rides along there. I like to ask people why they moved to this area, since we've had so many people coming in. And I get comments like they want 4 seasons, they want recreation, they want the easy access to other areas, or just a less hectic place to live. But the unanimous comments that I hear is that drive along there and along the lake and the view and the beauty of it. As soon as people see that, they're sold on it and they want to be here. The request to designate Highway 130 as a scenic highway is about preserving the unique beauty that we have here, and we're blessed with it. If we let that get away from us, we cannot turn the clock back to what we have now. So I thank you for your consideration to preserve one of Oconee County's unique scenic features. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gollin, Gary? Gary? Gary, if I could get you to turn your... Mr. Gollin? Mr. Gollin, if I could get you to mute your microphone. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Mr. Johnson. Martha Steele.
Good evening, Oconee Planning Commission. I'm Martha Steele, and my husband and I live in the Kiowee 123 subdivision, which is bordered by Highway 130, Rochester Highway. We definitely support the designation of this highway as a scenic highway from Old Clemson Highway to Doug Hollow Road. This stretch of Highway 130 and its corridor has exceptional scenic beauty, historical significance in the village of Newry, extensive recreational opportunities, and is representative of unique and irreplaceable characteristics of Oconee County. We ask that the Planning Commission please protect this section of 130 for now and for generations to come by designating it a scenic highway. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl Steiner.
Sorry, I'm moving a little slow today with a bum leg. Otherwise, I'd run right up there. I'm Carl Steiner. I live in Salem. I came to your beautiful county from growing up in northern Wisconsin, which has got a lot of similar characteristics to Oconee County. Then I moved to Chicago, raised my family in Chicago, and watched urban sprawl take over. We discovered this area when my daughter went to Clemson back in '04. And when we made the decision about 4 years ago to move down here, we took a look around at Lake Lanier and Lake Norman and Lake Hartwell and Lake Kiowee and all of the other options that you might have. And let's face it, this is the most beautiful area around. And that's why we chose to come here, because it hasn't been overtaken by rampant development. It hasn't had its infrastructure taxed like Lanier and Hartwell and other areas have. I'm sure you've all been to those areas. I think you know what I'm talking about. So I'm in support of this particular measure. Maybe it needs a little tweaking to take care of some of the people. Mr. Pittman, I think you mentioned about some commercial development there. Some of that might make sense in parts of it. What we, at least I and the people I've talked to, are trying to guard against is the rampant development by deep pocket developers who come in here and say, oh, here's a big chunk of land and we can put 1,000 or more homes on that. I believe that this particular recommendation is going to help manage that. I don't know that it's going to prevent it. I know there's some local investors that have some money involved there that, frankly, I'd like to see them find a way to at least break even on that property. But what I don't want to see, and I think the multiple letters that you've seen come in via email, and the few on the other side of that are saying is, help us manage this. This is one of the tools that you can use as the commission that's helped preserve this beautiful county. This is one of the tools that you all can use to help manage that. So I'll close by saying thanks. It's a hard job. I don't know how you get through all the words on that. But we appreciate what you're doing. I encourage you to vote for this.
Thank you. Mr. Gollin?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, we just want to make sure you're back on mute. I was having to silence it there. You'd been off mute for a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry, my fault.
No worries. No worries. I'm just glad you're back.
Thank you.
Sharon Hamilton.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Hamilton. I live in Seneca, and I have been a longtime member of the Kiowee Sailing Club, which, as you know, sits along that corridor. There's no doubt that that is one of the most beautiful sections of roads in the entire state. And I'm just going to quote a couple of items from the Oconee County's mission. It is the mission of Oconee County to provide our current and future citizens and visitors quality services while protecting our communities, heritage, environment, and natural resources. It is one of the few sections of 130 or any road that's been untouched in the 20 years that I have lived here, and it's important to keep that untouched is when we have the opportunity. The vision of Oconee County, a diverse, growing, safe, vibrant community guided by rural traditions, shaped by natural beauty, where employment, education, and recreation offer a rich quality of life for all generations, both today and tomorrow. So, assigning the scenic highway designation to this section of 130 aligns with both of those statements that are part of Oconee County's mission and vision. So, I appreciate your consideration in designating that as a scenic highway. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. James, we've got several emails that have asked to be read. We had a series of a significant number of emails from all over the county. There were several that were asked to be read. If you could read those for us, that'd be great.
We'll just get right into it. There's a couple, some are short, some are long. Please read this email since I will not be in attendance at this Monday, August 19th Planning Commission meeting regarding COVA's discussion to get the Planning Commission's approval to move this proposal to council for a vote. I live right on Highway 130 in Waterford Farm Lane, and I am trying to get the public and homeowners in Waterford Farms and other Waterford communities to show their support by attending the commission meeting. I do not want billboards placed along the highway. Please support COVA's proposal. That's Sharon and Stuart DeRitter. I support the proposed scenic highway designation as an asset for all of Oconee County. Everyone wins, especially adjacent property owners. During my career, I spent decades handling marketing projects for corporate clients, including a number of real estate developers. The last plans presented to the Planning Commission for developing the Kiwi River property include the primary target would be affluent, mature buyers, not students. That's why I'm totally baffled by the property owner's objection to COVA's scenic highway proposal. It seems the only restriction it might impose on adjacent properties regarding billboards. Based on my experience and the ability to tout KR as bordering a stretch of scenic highway renowned for its beauty would be a marketing windfall. Large billboards along the stretch of highway that spoil the scenic vistas would be a turnoff for many potential buyers. I'd like to applaud Keep Oconee Beautiful Association, COVA, for almost 40 years of service to the county. Over these decades, it has kept the mission focused without any hidden agendas. This is not the first scenic highway proposal COVA has championed in its continuing effort to preserve Oconee's natural beauty and to work with programs such as Adopt a Highway, prepare educational programs for elementary school children and adults regarding recycling and litter prevention. Thank you, COVA, and that's from Linda Lovely. I live off Highway 130 in one of the Waterford communities. It's a beautiful drive and we would like to keep it this way. I am fully in support of scenic highway proposal. That's Jera Lipperman. I support the Keep Oconee Beautiful Association's request to designate a portion of Highway 130, Rochester Highway, as described in proposal as scenic highway. That's from John Thompson. I support the Keep Oconee County Beautiful Association's request to designate a portion of Highway 130, Rochester Highway, as described in the proposal as a scenic highway. That's from Karen Thompson. My wife and I very much support and would like to see Rochester Highway be designated a scenic highway. Every day as we drive this road, we are reminded of the beauty of Oconee County. This view is what drew us to the east side of the lake as a permanent resident. The beauty as you cross the dikes and view from the forested areas needs to be recognized and preserved. Please designate Rochester Highway as a scenic highway. We are not able to attend the meeting tonight, but please ensure the committee receives our letter and please have it read into the record. It's Bray and Denise Manna. I respectfully request this email be read at the meeting as a homeowner directly and severely negatively impacted. I reside at 1101 Rochester Highway, Seneca 29672. Unfortunately, I am traveling this week and cannot attend the meeting. I vote yes on the scenic highway issue and am directly impacted. I spoke at a recent council meeting saying, generally, I support your land, do what you want with it. However, the needs to be balanced with not negatively impacting neighbors and residents. This proposed development severely negatively impacts myself and neighbors along the highway. That's from Pat Gannon. Sorry, I'm unable to attend the meeting and express this in person. Perhaps this can be read into the minutes for this evening's meeting. The original natural approach to Crescent that Duke took when they developed this area is one of the main drawing parts. Our pristine wooded frontages really add to the park-like feel in the area and the value of the surrounding property. I fully support designating the area along Highway 130 along Lake Kiwi as scenic highway. Best regards, and that's Landon Massey. That's it.
Thank you. All right. Would you like to come up? Sure. And let us know what you've done since the last.
Yes. For those who don't know, Phil Soper from Keep Oconee Beautiful Association. What I'd like to do to start, and then we can get into some of the particulars and questions. There was a communication from the Kiwi River Preservation Group. And as far as I know, they're the only group that had any negative thoughts about this process. But I didn't want to let that get away from us. I prepared a response, and I'm going to assume you've seen it and read it, or do you want me to go through it?
We read and then we've heard responses here tonight.
Okay, basically, I think that there was some misunderstanding, some innocent ignorance, whatever it was, relative to what the Kiwi River Group was doing. They criticized COBA as maybe not being a legitimate organization. Believe me, we are. We've had other highways designated as scenic highway. We know what we're doing. We're recognized around the state for the things that we do relative to litter prevention and recycling and the beautification of Oconee County. So if you have any questions in this letter, help yourself. I can answer them. But bottom line, I don't think there was anything in there that was really legitimate. I would caution you in the future, being careful of dealing with that particular group. They're probably not trustworthy. Okay.
Well, I sure don't want to talk about other folks, and well, it is a group, and as an LLC, my understanding is an owner, just like you're an owner of a property and somebody else is owner of a property as well, so.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You're welcome to their opinion, but they shouldn't be welcome to issuing facts that aren't true. The last time I was here, as I remember, we had a couple of things we talked about. One of them was a statement in the billboard ordinance that said that new billboard construction cannot be done on a scenic highway. Us worried about the beautification of the county, that's probably a positive for us. It may not be a positive for everybody, but it probably is. And in my initial publication where I said there were no restrictions, that was an incorrect statement, and we've taken it out and changed it and included the fact that billboards would not be allowed on this scenic highway. So hopefully that point's handled. The second thing we talked about, there was a concern that maybe someone could come in later, may it be the state or some other organization, and change the designation of our scenic highway. And I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but in the application, we've added a sentence or two at the bottom saying that the designation of this scenic highway cannot be changed without the approval of county council. I've run that by James and by Mike and by our attorney, and I think we're okay with that, and I think it solves that question. The other thing we talked about at our first gathering, I think we had 40 or 50 support letters, and there was maybe a request where we should be talking to more of the owners along the highway. So the GIS department did a search for us, and they identified 60 properties that were juxtapositioned, adjoining Highway 130 at the scenic highway, that section of scenic highway. At the same time, they gave us names and addresses of those property owners. Now, we did some more searches, and it turned out some of those property owners had more than one address, and we wanted to try our best to reach them. So we actually sent out 68 letters explaining the project and requesting their support. Included in that letter was a self-addressed stamped envelope with our address on it, so people could simply sign the form, drop it in the envelope, and send it back to us. Now, in that list, this started out to be 60. As it turned out, there were 6 or 7 duplicates. There were a lot of different properties owned by Duke. There were 6 or 7 of those, and we made a decision. We really didn't expect Duke to get in this argument, if we will. So we never did hear back from Duke. Let's see. Some other interesting facts. Find my right piece of paper. There were some people from out of state, and we figured those people, obviously they didn't live on the property and didn't necessarily have a lot of interest, and we never heard from those people. 5 of the letters that we sent out came back from the post office as not deliverable to that address. We found that kind of interesting because I think the addresses, most of them came from the tax records. So I'm not exactly sure how the people were getting their tax invoices and paying for them. A number of the owners of those properties, in fact, even lived outside of Oconee County. When you boil it down, there were about 20 Oconee County residents that lived or owned those pieces of property. Some of them are businesses. And we heard from about 10 of them. So we felt pretty strongly about that, but just to be sure, there's 3 major subdivisions along that route. There's Kiwi 1, 2, and 3, and I think we've heard from them today. There's East Shores, and you've heard from them. And then there's Waterford, the various Waterford communities. And we surveyed those residents because they live near there, they use it, they drive there. So from that group of people, we got another maybe 190, 200 letters of support. I gave copies of that to James this morning. I don't know if he's had the chance to send it to you or not. You're welcome to it. But our point is, I think we're ready. I think you've heard from the people here. You have all of the letters of support. I think we're ready to move. Anybody have questions or comments? Anything I can do to move this along? I'm more than willing to do that.
I got a question, Flip.
Sure.
Was that Mr. Wigginton and Tommy Pittman on that list?
Yes.
The 2 fellas that want to know more about it, were they on your mailer list?
Yes, they were.
I'd like to know where Mr. Wigginton and Mr. Pittman's property is, please. On 130.
If you turn on the 130 off of Mountain View, I'm sorry, out off of Old Hudson Highway, turn right on 130, and mine is the parcel that fronts 130 and Major Road.
There used to be a house there.
Oh, that corner there?
Correct.
Okay.
Old Hudson Highway comes in here.
There's a little sliver between Major Road and Old Hudson Highway. Mine starts at Major Road. Because, you know where the Duke access rail is?
Yeah.
Well, I go down to their access right there. Right
Okay.
And I I never got a letter.
And my property is on the corner of Hudson Highway and 130. There used to be two houses there.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Was there not a discussion at the last meeting that we were going to talk about moving the,
It seems like there was a discussion.
try to get some of these people that are opposed to it out of it?
I believe there was. That kind of segues into a question that I have here is on the application, I think everybody received the application. It says, flexible but potentially covers a 3 to 5 mile stretch between the traffic lights of Old Clemson Highway and Doug Hollow Road. And then details of the intrinsic quality. I know on the application, it's the ordinance, a detailed description of the section of highway, including 2 or more of the intrinsic qualities. I know that from what I'm hearing folks saying, those views are phenomenal when you cross the dams. They're really cool. Are you giving us the option here between that section? In other words, do we just narrow it down to the 2 dams as the area of coverage? That's the view that we're referring to, it seems like. Only because I'm assuming that any other view on that section could change. And I'm not sure how we handle the scenic highway sign. If the view changes, do we take down the sign? I don't know what, because the view is the dam to me, is where that beauty. When we're talking about intrinsic, I didn't see the intrinsic qualities. You mentioned 1, 2, and 3. I'm looking at 2, the historic quality, and then the cultural quality. Can you elaborate on those 2, how they are applicable?
As I recall, on that stretch of highway or Highway 130, there's some markers. One is a marker for, and I apologize because I can't remember his first name, Rochester, who the highway was named for, in history back at, I guess, at the end of World War II, he was involved in the development and the economic development of that area. Another marker was a General Bertram, I believe, and he was early Cherokee vintage person who I think went through that area when it was, in fact, an Indian trail, I believe.
I think I have seen some of those signs. Are those in this stretch? I thought there was a sign just past the bridge at the plant. But I've never seen any parking or pull-off. Do we know what the right-of-ways are in any of those sections?
Very. I'm not sure exactly where those markers are. You can see where the right-of-way does increase and decrease in certain areas along that state highway.
The William Bartram one is on the, when you're leaving the nuclear station after you cross the bridge, get it past almost to the Wachovia there, it's
on the
what
right.
used to be the Wachovia on the right. It's not gonna be on this stretch, but
The Bertram marker is like right at Windward 1.
Right at Windward Point?
Windward 1, those 3. So
Gotcha.
The Windward 1 is across from the old Wells Fargo, which is now the new bank.
it used to be a Wachovia.
Gotcha. Is that inside this stretch?
Whatever.
It's outside this stretch, is it?
But is the trail inside the stretch? The exact trail of William Bartram? Do we know anything about his trail?
No, I don't think Rochester Highway, that the marker is, where the marker is placed, it, I think, respects the entire Rochester Highway area, and the Bertram was again a trail that went through that area, and where exactly the position of the marker is, I don't think significant here.
Where the trail's right under Local.
So I do have a question. What happens if the view changes? That is the biggest deal to me. is when we pass the dams, it's wonderful trees, and I love the current view, but obviously there was a proposed development that back when, that I don't know materialized in any form or fashion, but if they come in and do their thing, that clearly changes the view. So what do we do as far as that scenic highway? Do we take down the sign at that point, or what?
I can help you a touch with that.
Yes, sir.
I covered it in our response to the Kiwi River Preservation Group letter. Beginning at the bottom of the first page, and it's a quote from the scenic highway ordinance that in essence says that the scenic highway should be reviewed by a person designated by the county administrator to re-review the scenic highway. And if there is any changes or any of those kind of things, then it comes back to you folks to make a recommendation of change. And that recommendation then would go to the county council.
Yeah, it says a reclassification of the category or a redesignation, is that statement that you're reading there. And I didn't know what that meant exactly. What a redesignation, does that mean you designate it as not, or you designate it as a different feature of? And the reason I say that is because in section 6, under scenic highway, it says that the scenic highway shall be divided into 2 route categories. So I'm assuming that council then has to designate it either in 1 or 2, highway with limited development visible or highway with no development visible. And then so when it becomes a reclassification, does that mean that it changes one of these 2 features, or does that mean it eliminates entirely?
I thought, when you brought it up, because I didn't prep for this in particular, but
Sorry.
that it would be either. You know, certainly a classification from scenic to non-scenic would be a reclassification. From Division 1 to Division 2 would be a reclassification or redesignation. So that's the way I read it, is both. It's pretty, it's not a super fulsome ordinance, so there's gaps to be filled in, I guess, by way of application, but that's the way I take that. And then, just since I got the floor a little bit now, and I think y'all are on this, but this is just a recommendation from you all based on the application that was submitted. You make the recommendation to council, and council runs with it via ordinance, so that'll be 3 readings, public hearing, and that. I don't know that, I think the application, probably want to take that as you receive it, as opposed to tweaking it much, just make a recommendation on that application. Certainly you can talk it out. Mr. Sipper may want to change things, I don't know, but that's.
So to drill down on that a little bit, the ordinance says a detailed description of the section of highway. The application says flexible 3 to 5 mile stretch of highway between this window. Who defines that?
I would think that would be an infirmity with the application, that it would need to be redefined specifically. You all do not, the applicant would. So I think it needs to be 4, 3, 5, whatever, and marked out what it needs to be.
And the county council would probably have their shot at it also if they decided they wanted to change the beginning and end point.
Who else has input?
Yeah, so clarification on that. You're saying that the petitioner needs to define the range of the scenic highway. It's not up to the county itself, because you're petitioning the county. So the question is, what is it?
Our recommendation is between Old Clemson Highway and Dale Hollow Road.
So Mr. Chairman, I have the floor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So in your application, and this is a question for Mr. Reed, they have notated that they will not pursue, can you pull that part of the application? Yeah, I'm digging for it, but I can't find it over here. Right there. Any future changes to this designation of Oconee County Scenic Highway and this scenic have the approval of Oconee County Council. This is basically a statement from them, correct? But that does not mean that another group could not come in and request it by the state to be,
I was informed this was a statement by Mr. Root. Is that correct?
That change,
That sentence?
there's something I would say, I don't remember saying it, but it is
But-
law.
but this is only keeping, if I understand this correctly, is only keeping this group from going any further for as requesting state scenic highway restrictions.
Maybe, and I don't know that it would be a contractual, that the state scenic highway, if you've read through that, it's ambiguous, at best on what it can do, it can't do. I think they just take it each road at a time. But the law of the land, this land, is county council would be the ones to initiate it, designate it, be the ones to make the change. So they're the only ones who can initiate it by ordinance, and obviously they would have to use an ordinance to change it down the road, so.
But I'm saying this, I guess what I'm asking from you, I heard a maybe there, and, it's.
Maybe I didn't understand, maybe I didn't understand the question.
Does this statement in here keep any other group from pursuing the state scenic highway?
No, I would say no.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that.
So this is basically just a statement from,
However, it has to be approved by council.
well, that's,
the law.
yeah, but that's a known factor. All right. James, this is more for you.
Okay.
So, commercial entities, how are they affected with this designation?
So it does not affect commercial use, it affects two uses.
Okay.
First is billboards, which we already talked about, the second is commercial junkyards. With the new
Okay.
commercial junkyard ordinance.
So,
Junkyards?
so there's no additional setback for commercial entities that want to be on?
No. It doesn't change any, so the county designation does not.
Okay.
What if a commercial entity is within the 750 feet overlay and would need to go in front of the BZA? Does this designation, I don't want to say the word trump, but does this designation influence the BZA's decision?
So it's never happened before, so I can't tell you what it would do in the future, but they're unrelated to each other. The restrictions of the overlay, it's all commercial uses restricted based on the overlay already. So if they're going for a variance, it's gonna be for a special exemption for the commercial use, then they're gonna go for that. There is no restriction on commercial within the scenic highway.
Do we have any other questions, Mr. Sofer? Are we still in
I
discussion?
don't have any additional questions. You may have any additional questions for Mr. Soper?
I would just say that maybe we just exclude those commercial properties down there by 130 and start the road further up. I mean, Old Clemson Highway, I'm sorry. Just start the designation, we're saying 3 to 5 miles, we'll just shorten it a little and.
That would have to be, if I understand this correctly, will have to come from the petitioners.
Correct.
So, I think, may I have the floor again?
Yes, sir.
I think it's very clear with the members that came up tonight and what the desire of majority of them wanted from this ordinance. And I think it's not in the intent of the ordinance itself. This scenic highway ordinance is really to bring a community together. It's really to help them be proud of the area that they live in, that they're next to. But what I see is we're wanting to use this as a means to restrict property. A lot of people in here that came up tonight stated that. And that's what worries me, because that will drive a wedge. And the people that has property on this feel like they will feel like they did not have a say if not passed. The overall view of the property in the presentation, I felt was misleading. It kept looping over the dikes and the dam, did not view the rest of the property. The dikes and the dam, I do not see changing in the foreseeable future. The lake's up against one side, and there's a steep drop off on the other. But if you was to go on down the road, you have a view of a communication tower on one end, on that drive, and you soon will have a view of a communication tower on the other end of that drive. You have utilities that run parallel and also perpendicular to the road for a good bit of that drive. You have timberland on one side and subdivisions on the other, with the exception of where the dam and the dike is. We just really have to think about, is this where we want to go from here? And it bothers me that we're using such a wonderful tool to give a community pride, to use it as a restriction of property owners, and apparently some of them didn't even know this was going on. Is that who we are? Is that the American way? So I will be voting no for this because of that overreach and misuse of this ordinance. Mr. Chair.
Is there any other need for Mr. Sopar up there? Feel free to sit down. We'll call you back up if from the standpoint of any additional discussion. As I understand this is, James, this is directed to you. As I understand in reading the ordinance over and over and over, that this is about no billboards. We know of one that exists now in this overlay, and it's about trash pickup within the right-of-way. Doesn't stop the timber owner from timbering, doesn't stop the timber owner from the developing. This is strictly about trash pickup. Is that correct assessment?
So residential uses and agricultural uses are permitted by right everywhere, but there's no restriction now. And this would not change that.
I just want to make sure that the public understood that this, because there were a couple of comments about, the intrinsic beauty and there shouldn't be development, and this has nothing to do with development on there. I'm wondering, the trash pickup was committed for 3 times a year. I'm wondering why there wasn't, it didn't adopt a highway 4 times a year or something of that nature. I'm curious why we weren't going that direction as opposed to adopt a highway direction as opposed to scenic highway direction. Only because my concern again is when the guy that owns the timber cuts the timber, it's no longer gonna look scenic beyond the 2 dams.
Well, remember, they do get billboards, so.
Do what?
They do get billboards, so.
As far as the right to do billboards?
Yeah, they take that away.
Gotcha.
So it's not just trash pickup. There are other things. So not many, but.
My biggest fear is, as, I heard people come up and talk tonight. What is the restrictions if it becomes a state scenic highway?
The state restrictions, I couldn't quote them all to you, but there are additional setbacks and there are, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying without actually looking it up, but there is more restrictions.
Right, and I'm just concerned that the intent of this, because the landowners are not included, that this may just be a stepping stone to other designations, or using this as a measure in denying variances and things of that nature. That's where I'm concerned at. And, if all these people we heard from got up and they was solely focused on the beauty of it and not on how it affected how developments would affect their drive-in, then I'd say we're on the right path, especially if we had the buy-in from landowners. But I don't see that here tonight.
If this was to happen and somebody needed a variance, could they go to the BZA and ask for one? Yeah, so variances are not denied, or the chance to request a variance is not prohibited or denied or anything like that. Is that correct? Right.
I was really hoping that the application would be narrowed down and more specific. From my first conversation, and it says in the ordinance, a detailed description of the section of highway, and this is not a detailed description, it's a 3 to 5 mile stretch, currently but flexible. It sounds like from Mr. Root, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it is the applicant that needs to be specific on that it doesn't come from us as a recommendation to council.
Correct. I would say that you could countenance a couple ways, I guess. One would be, you got to give a recommendation to council one way or the other, so either up or down. And with the down, I suppose you could say, we're doing this voting down because we don't have a clear definition of the span of the highway. Mr. Soper could, right now, very clearly say it's, what was it, Old Clemson, Doug Hollow, and make that specific. You give your recommendation off of that, but it's not having it specifically defined when it calls for it. I think that is a problem, yes.
He did say Old Clemson Highway to Doug Hollow Road, and again, it does encompass a property that has a billboard on it currently. Is there any more discussion? Then calling for the vote. Mr. Gollan, are you there as well, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So all those in favor of sending this,
What is the motion?
okay,
Is
then
it
we're,
affirmative or?
so I guess we need a motion then, don't we? I was just going to say, do we send this to council or not? But I guess that somebody needs to make a motion to send this to council.
It has to go to council. It's just sending it with a recommendation for or against.
Okay. Does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion. I make a motion that we send this application to council and, what did you say?
You either recommend that they approve it or disapprove it.
Sounds good.
So you got,
Well, we
choose one.
Our approval or.
Yes, y'all are saying, hey, county council, approve this or don't. So y'all have to give that recommendation, one or the other.
I'd like to send this application to the county council and ask for their approval. Is that good?
Works.
Did I hear you, Mr. Gollan, that you were seconding that?
Correct.
You've made a motion that we're to forward this to council as written for their approval. All right, unless there's any more discussion on it, all those in favor of sending it as it's written to council, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I got it. I'll vote it, just go with it, Mike. We'll talk about it later a while.
Okay. All those opposed to as written signify by saying aye.
That motion fails. 3-4.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So it's gonna go to council. I'm gonna take.
Oh, it's got to go to council as a rejected by this as written.
Y'all
Okay.
voted, took the vote to give a favorable recommendation that failed. So I'm gonna pass along the negative recommendation and they'll take it from there.
Okay. Anything, were you wanting to say something?
What? Just listening, it doesn't restrict forestry, it doesn't restrict residential, and it's commercial, right? It don't bother commercial. does Phil have to present this as proposed, or can he tweak it before it gets to council? I mean, we're voting on it as it is. Is he going to present it?
It's not written in there. I think that, like I said, I think he could make an amendment to that application right now to make it specific as to that roadway. There's nothing that prohibits that. There's nothing in there that would prohibit it when he comes in front of council to make that specific.
Because I think he's heard the friction, and to clean it up.
All right, so we're set on 8 and 9. Motion to adjourn.
So,
Second.
All in favor, aye.